Well, let's hear it, folks. We finally hit NHL trade deadline day, and who knows what the Nashville Predators still have left up their sleeve. Dante Fabbro, Tyson Berry, Juuse Saros. We'll talk about what we think will and won't happen today. Plus, new look Nashville Predators go down to Florida, steal a win against the Panthers 2-1. We'll talk about why this skin of their teeth win feels a little bit easier to celebrate than similar games the Preds have played this season. We'll talk about it today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast that's available to you wherever you get your podcast and, of course, on YouTube as well. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com. I normally have a partner in crime, but Ann has the morning off. We've made it, folks. After a wild week of changes for the Nashville Predators, both in the front office itself and on the team, we have hit what we think is at least the finish line for this season. NHL trade deadline day. It is going to be an interesting one for sure across the NHL because there were some big name targets on the board, but most of them have already been traded. Yeah, there's plenty of good talent left, but look at like the athletic best available, and it's like Nick Schmaltz at number 2, and it's like, oh, okay. We kind of had our dessert before we had our main course, didn't we? But still plenty to get to that today. What are the Nashville Predators going to do? Like we said, Dante Fabbro, still an interesting trade target that's out there. People are still rumbling about Juuse Saros. Is that going to happen? We'll talk about it today coming up, but first, let's talk about the Predators game last night because this is an interesting one as well. Predators, of course, went down to Florida to take on the Florida Panthers. Great start for the Nashville Predators. We had Matt Duchene score 7 seconds in to a power play. Great feed by Luke Evangelista, got his first point. Then you had John Leonard, a surprise call-up playing his first game for the Preds this season, was able to maneuver in a great feed from Roman Josi. Great stick handling play there. And then here came the Florida Panthers. A lot of pressure in the second and third period for Florida. They capitalized, made it 2-1 on a Brandon Montour goal. But Kevin Lankinen, who got the start in this game, closed the door. The Predators also had a couple of key block shots down the line. Predators absolutely saved this one. 2-1 was the final score. One word to describe this game: lost. And I'm not talking about the Predators losing the game. They won this game, and I think they should be happy with this performance. I'm talking about the TV show Lost. This was one of my favorites on TV for about 3 seasons. And the reason why it was my favorite for 3 seasons and not the full 7 was because it started out with a bang and absolutely just action all around. Who are these others? How are they going to survive on this island? What's everybody's secret? And then, it sort of tallied down halfway in the middle. It's like, okay, this, I guess, makes sort of sense. And then by the end, you're thinking, oh, what's going on here? What is this chaos I'm watching? And boy, that kind of felt like the Nashville Predators game last night, didn't it? Predators, of course, started out hot. Perfect engagement in the offensive zone. It looked like they really had the Panthers on their heels. A lot of people driving the net. A lot of people just putting pucks on net, trying to test the goaltender. And then as the game went on, things got a little bit sloppy. You started seeing some more giveaways, some not great transition plays, some botched opportunities to drive the net. And then by the end of the game, boy, Florida was just a tornado, and the Nashville Predators were just hunkered down there in their cellar in the defensive zone. To their credit, though, you saw some defensive players step up with some big block shots. You saw Kevin Lankinen, of course, come up huge, 30 saves for him. I think it's safe to say he was a big reason they stole the win. The Predators kind of had to survive this one, go some like old-fashioned non-puck possession hockey to steal the win. But you know what? I think that's okay, because in this new era of the Nashville Predators, where you got a mix of, veteran players that are mostly like AHL journeymen. You got young players from the minors coming up here to try to cement themselves on the roster moving forward as the Preds start to rebuild. Wins like this, I think, are more okay in that context. Like, if this happened when you have, Mattias Ekholm and Nino Niederreiter, and you're spending close up to the cap, expecting to make a championship run, like a lot of the people in the front office expected the Nashville Predators to do this year, then this is like, okay, 2 points are 2 points, but we got to clean this up. This isn't going to be sustainable hockey moving forward. I mean, it's not sustainable hockey, but it's also good for players like Luke Evangelista, who had a great game last night, Phil Tomasino, Cody Glass, Tommy Novak. It's good for them to go out and get a win like this. A gritty win kind of lets you know, look, you're going to have to find ways to win in the NHL. Like, if this was a playoff game, nobody would be batting an eye about, the Corsi or expected goals or this and that. All that they would matter was the one tally that winds up next to their name in the win column in the series. And this is good practice for that down the road, however long it takes Nashville Predators to get back into the postseason. It's not fully out of the question it's this year. I don't think it's going to be this year, but it's not fully out of the question just yet. But I think more from the emotional standpoint, the development standpoint, it's good to get wins like this. And eventually you'll be able to build off of it. You'll be able to get guys like Evangelista more confidence. And then hopefully, you're winning goals or you're winning games like you won the first time you played Florida, which is just puck possession, swarming offense, limited mistakes. That's the kind of hockey you eventually want to play long term. But for now, be happy with the way this game turned out. A couple of interesting notes for this game. Of course, we had another injury on the blue line. How is that going to impact the trade deadline? We had a couple of Nashville Predators debuts to talk about, including Tyson Berry and the aforementioned John Leonard. And of course, NHL trade deadline day. Your guess is as good as mine as to what is going to happen. So a lot to get to in this edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. But first, I want to take a second and mention today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. Ann and I have spoken these guys' praises for quite some time. It is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Trust me, you do not have to compromise good taste if you're trying to eat healthy, because Built Bar is a perfect treat without all the fat and calories. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, covered in 100% real chocolate. Yep, real chocolate. Plus, they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, cherry barcia, mint brownie. Plenty to choose from, but here's the kicker. Each Built Bar, only about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein to keep you full throughout the day. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Well, now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Walmart, head to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a 4-box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors like brownie batter and churro. You can thank us later. And of course, you can check out all your favorites at Built.com. They're always coming out with new flavors. So again, head to Built.com and see what they have in store for you this month. All right, back to the Predators game last night, a 2-1 win over the Florida Panthers. There is a bit of news from this game that's not great. Alexander Carrier appears to be out again. Got hit in the shoulder with a puck. Believe it was the shoulder, might have been collarbone, somewhere right around here. Wound up not playing in the most of the second and any of the third. That is going to be an interesting development. How long he's out for, if any. Hopefully, it's just a bad bruise, maybe a day-to-day thing. Hopefully, he'll be on the ice sooner rather than later. Because if he's not, the Predators have some decisions to make on the right side of that defense. Because remember, Dante Fabbro is on the trade block. Is David Poile really going to trade Fabbro if he thinks that Alexander Carrier might be out for any length of period of time? I know you just got Tyson Berry, but at the same time, you don't want to lose two right shot defensemen for the price of one, especially one that has experience playing on the top line. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Carrier situation, how hurt he is, will that impact anything today? We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. Positive things about this game to talk about. It is the week of debuts. That's what happened when half your team gets traded. Let's start with Tyson Berry. Made his NHL debut, or not his NHL debut, his Preds debut last night against Florida, coming out of the ice in jersey number 22. It was a fine first game. You know, he played 21 minutes of ice time. He had a key block shot down the stretch. Also, kind of had a bad giveaway there, kind of in the middle of the game. But I also don't want to hold that against him because there's a lot going on. Not only is it really hard to make your team debut with a new team, especially one like this, where you've lost half of your key players to trade. You have some other players out due to injury, and this is kind of a hodgepodge team. That was tough anyway. You're trying to settle into that team, and then all of a sudden, one of the guys on your side of the defensive depth chart gets hurt in the first period, and now you're playing the rest of the game double shifting or playing some guys you didn't play with on the morning skate. That is a big thing. Like, that is something that is going to be an interesting thing. And it was also his equipment issue. He didn't get as much time with the team as he probably would have liked. So, I don't hold anything against Tyson Berry. I think we'll see better performances from him. Not saying it was a bad performance by any means. I think he did a lot of things really well. I just think it's one of those performances where it's like, yeah, like nothing that blows you away, but nothing that makes you say, oh, the Predators got this guy in the Mattias Ekholm trade? Really? They couldn't get anybody better than that? They're paying him $4 million for this? Nothing like that. I do think, he might get traded. Who knows? The Predators might hold on to him for at least until next year's trade deadline. I think if he does, I think there are better nights for him. But, I mean, there could also have certainly been worse nights for him as well. I do still think Tyson Berry is a good fit for this Nashville Predators team. I think especially when everybody's healthy and you have, Ryan McDonough playing in a normal spot, maybe he's teamed up with Tyson Berry on that second pair. I think that's a pretty good pair. Lets Alexander Carrier go up to Roman Josi's spot. I think there's some promise there. Let's talk about Luke Evangelista. Wasn't his NHL debut. That was against the Pittsburgh Penguins, but this was his second NHL game, and we saw him get his first career point. And not just you just happen to be one of the last few players to touch the puck point either. He set up Matt Duchene on the power play, a great pass, a great veteran pass to find Duchene, and Duchene was able to capitalize on that. Good That was a great play, the kind of plays you want to see from a young player like Evangelista. Again, playmaking, passing is kind of what he's known for, kind of his bread and butter. So you love to see a play like that lead to a goal. He only 12 minutes of ice time, which makes me think John Hynes is still not 100% sold on him, especially the defensive zone, still easing him in. But that's okay because we saw him on the power play. You know, the only 7 minutes of power play time there were in this game. That was weird. No penalties after the first period. But hey, he was on the first power play unit against Pittsburgh when the Predators were down late and had the net empty. He was on the ice as part of the extra attacker unit, crew, whatever you want to call that. So John Hynes is putting him in positions that suits his strength, which is the offensive end of the ice. And I think as long as he does that, then I think we can be happy about Luke Evangelista's ice time, what he's doing. And I certainly think there's going to be more room for guys like Evangelista, Tommy Novak, Phil Tomasino, Cody Glass to get more of those first look opportunities with, Mikael Granlund traded and Nino Niederreiter traded. Now you have no excuse to put these young players in opportunities to succeed. The Ellie Tolvanen debate about, we just couldn't find, time for him on the power play. There's no excuse for that now. It is a absolutely necessity to put guys like Evangelista and Tomasino and Novak and Glass on prime opportunities, your first look power play. And I think as long as Hynes continues to do that with some of these younger players, I think we'll be okay with however much time Luke Evangelista gets in this game. How about John Leonard? Surprise call up before the game. I say surprise. He's had a very good year in Milwaukee. Of course, this was the depth piece that the Predators got in the Luke Kunin trade last year. I know a lot of people, wanted maybe another prospect coming up, maybe Afanasiev, maybe somebody like Joakim Kondolik, but I think the Preds wanted to kind of shore up that bottom half of their lineup, especially now that Tanner Jeannot is gone and Juuse Saros still hurt. So I think a lot of people were maybe wanting to see somebody else, but John Leonard, you can't do much better than your Preds debut than that. Roman Josi made that play happen, but do not overlook John Leonard's finishing on that second goal either. I mean, Josi gave him the puck, kind of froze the defense, but then Leonard had to beat the goalie, and he did a great backhand, forehand, backhand again move to put the puck past Florida on that one. Yeah, I mean, and that's a key. John Leonard was in the right spot, right in front of the net, and that's kind of hockey 101. You need guys who are going to be able to do that, to get to the front of the net. And even if it's a less skilled guy like John Leonard, if he's in the right spots, if he's making the right moves, if he's being in the right place, you're going to have a chance to score. I mean, we saw that with Tanner Jeannot getting 24 goals last year. How many of those were just Jeannot happening to be in the right place at the right time? That's still a hockey skill of being able to get to the areas that give you chance at give me goals. And John Leonard, I think, displayed that last night. That's certainly his game. And he also did very well on the defensive end, too. I mean, remember, that was kind of his bread and butter. What a lot of people like about him is his defensive prowess. One of the first things they talk about. You saw it in Milwaukee, and you saw it last night. Another key block shot. I think he's a player that is good for the rest of the season. Somebody really solid to fill in that bottom half of the lineup. We'll see how the line shake up when Parsonen comes back, when Forsberg gets healthy. It seems like each of them may be right around the corner, especially Forsberg. So we'll see who's where. But, if John Leonard when he winds up staying on this team, at least for the rest of the season, that's a good look and a good chance for him I think, to maybe earn a bigger role on this team next year. So plenty of positive notes for the Nashville Predators. And of course, Kevin Lankinen. What can you say about him? 30 saves, a lot of key ones down the stretch. I think he was your number one star last night for sure. And I'll say it again, boy, was I wrong about that signing in the offseason. For shame. So Nashville Predators get the 2-1 win. They're now on, they're still, their past 10 games look pretty good right now. Playoffs aren't out of the question. Who knows if it's going to happen after this fire sale, but the way the West is this year, anything can happen, folks. Buckle up. It's going to be an interesting time to be a Nashville Predators fan. And it starts this afternoon. It is the NHL trade deadline. We've got your preview coming up. What do we think will happen? What do we think won't happen? Because there's some key things we need to talk about in there as well. First, though, want to mention today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Nashville Predators fans know this. If you don't have players on the ice with the right skills, whether it's breakaway speed or elite playmaking ability, you're gonna have a tough time winning. The same goes for your business. Indeed is a fast, simple way to make sure you're hiring MVPs. If you're hiring, you need Indeed. That's because Indeed is a hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed partners with you every step of the hiring process, from finding great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates with resumes that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. So start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked-on. That offer is valid through March 31st. Indeed.com/locked-on to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. If you need that website again, Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. All right. It is Christmas morning for NHL fans. It is trade deadline day. One of my favorite days of the year. I remember even back being a kid on trade deadline day, my mom would pick me up from school with a printed out list of all the trades that had happened. She had the Red Wing one circled, of course, because the Preds weren't around yet. And then when they were, they gave me the Preds ones too, even though the first couple Preds trade deadlines were super boring. Sorry, Blair Atchingham. And then later I would skip school in college because I wanted to stay and watch Trade Center. I called out sick from work to watch some of these. It is just a fun time. If anything, a great chance to see who do I update my rosters on NHL to. This trade line is going to be an interesting one. Both in the NHL and for the Nashville Predators, it seems like a lot of the biggest pieces of fruit on the trade tree have already been picked. Mattias Ekholm for the Predators, that was kind of the big one that a lot of people were looking at. He's gone to Edmonton. Mikael Granlund, a good secondary piece. He's gone to Pittsburgh. The Tanner Jeannot trade, boy, that's a package people are going to be talking about for a long time. So there's just a lot of moves that I think could have been made for the Nashville Predators. A lot of the ones that you think would be the most likely have already happened. Same for the NHL. I mean, Timo Meier, who a lot of people thought would have been the best available player, off the board. You have Tarasenko, Ryan O'Reilly, Patrick Kane, all these big names, taken off the board. Jacob Chikrin, who's been on the trade block for 3 years now. he's, that saga is finally over. So there are some good pieces here and there across the NHL. For the Nashville Predators, let's talk about some of the pieces still left. The biggest one is Dante Fabbro. Remember, we were saying Dante Fabbro, no matter what the Nashville Predators decided to do at the deadline, Dante Fabbro was like the one guy that we all thought, oh, he's definitely going to get traded. That was like the one, count your money, put it all in. This guy is going to be traded at the deadline. And that's the one that's now looking like, I'm not 100% sure that's going to happen. That's, the Carrier injury, I think maybe a wild card. Dante Fabbro played last night, and a lot of people were saying that the fact that he wasn't held out of the lineup was a sign that maybe they're going to hold on to him at the deadline. And maybe, but I mean, Mikael Granlund played the day before the Penguins acquired him. So I don't read too much into that, but I do think the Carrier injury is going to have an impact on what the Predators wind up doing with Dante Fabbro at this trade deadline. There's a lot of people that would fit him in. I mean, he's a player who's got arbitration rights. He's a restricted free agent, so you at least have some control over his future. If you like him and want to keep him back, you're not going to have to engage in a bidding war. He only costs about $2.3 million, so you're not going to have to do a lot of cap maneuvering to get him in. Maybe if you're a team like Toronto who's in need of another defenseman on that right side, yeah, maybe you will. But there's a lot of teams that could be able to fit him in without a lot of wiggling around. It's interesting. One of the teams that we're interested in him is the San Jose Sharks, a rebuilding team that looks at a guy like Fabbro, maybe looks at him as a bit of a reclamation project. They're still very much in their rebuild and could use a guy like Fabbro to at least, take up some minutes. Maybe on that second pair, somebody to play behind Erik Karlsson, because it doesn't look like Erik Karlsson's going to get traded anytime soon. That's an option. I mean, it worked for Luke Cunnin. It worked for Matt Benning in San Jose. Both of them are playing pretty prominent roles right now. So maybe that's a good fit. Or maybe you just see like another contender, like the New York Islanders, like the Calgary Flames, who are kind of desperate to shore up their defensive depth. Maybe they take a stab at somebody like Dante Fabbro, much like what the Nashville Predators did last year for Jeremy Lauzon, and say, look, this is a guy that might be able to help us fill out some depth right now, but also somebody that maybe we can work to develop down the stretch. So I still think, if there's a team out there that's willing to offer a second round pick, there were some whispers that the Preds were maybe asking for a first for Fabbro, given this market. Doubt that's going to happen. But I also think maybe if you get a top 2 round pick for Dante Fabbro, that's going to be too good to pass up. So I think a lot of that, obviously, I don't think David Poile wants to play the rest of this year with the entire right side of the defense completely in shambles, especially if Carrier's hurt. But I also think that's going to be too good to pass up. Tyson Berry, I think for the same reason, there's a lot of people that when he came over as part of that Oilers deal, a lot of people were saying, yep, Preds are going to flip that. He's going to be part of another package. They're going to get more assets to him. Maybe that's still the plan. I just don't see that happening this year. I think they want to see what Barrie can provide. Again, a very, very good piece. I think a very underrated piece, especially on offense. Pretty good at setting up plays. We saw that back in Colorado. We're seeing it now with Edmonton. He's not just collecting points because of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. He's actively setting up some plays. So I think you're going to see, maybe the Predators keep him, especially in that, in that top 4 role, and see what they have, see maybe if he can help this team win some games as some younger players up front are developing. Plus, you really don't have that many quality defensive prospects right now. It's not 2018 where your defensive pipeline is just loaded. You got Ryan Ufko coming up. But other than that, there's not really a lot of surefire potential to be top 4 defensemen in that pipeline, unless somebody like Adam Wilsby or Spencer Stastny really have a quality year next year. Here's what I think is not going to happen. Juuse Saros. And we've talked about the reasons why, but for some reason, Saros' name still out there. A lot of people are still saying either the Predators should trade him. You're still seeing a lot of people say, that there's teams sniffing around, especially teams that need goaltending. I just don't see it, nor do I think it should happen. I think the only way you trade Juuse Saros right now is if there is just some ungodly once in a lifetime package that's full of draft picks, that's full of top prospects in the pool, maybe a good young position player. I think that's the only way you consider trading Juuse Saros. Goaltending is just too weird of a commodity in the NHL. Like there's just, we've seen players bounce from team to team that were Vezina candidates year in and year out with one team, sign a big $10 million contract and wind up, looking like an absolute liability. I think if you have a goaltender that works for you, that's winning games in your system with your team, I think that is too good to pass up. So I think they keep Juuse Saros. Plus, I just think, Yaroslav Askarov is the heir apparent, and I don't think he's quite ready for a full NHL season under his belt yet. The other thing that's interesting is Kevin Lankinen. Now, this is a guy that I think would get a good return. Played last night, a good audition for other teams if he is on the trade block. This is a guy who's having one of the best seasons of his life. He's a plus, 920 save percentage goaltender. That's very rare. He hasn't slowed down. He's gotten, a decent number of starts, obviously significantly less than Juuse Saros, but he's still proven that he can go in and add some valuable goaltending depth. And, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more talk about Lankinen because he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. He might want some term, which I'm not sure the Predators are going to want to give him because Askarov's in the minors and probably, after one more year is going to be in the NHL. I don't think, I would be very surprised if the Predators were able to convince him to stay for another 1-year deal. So I'm surprised you're not asking around, especially these teams desperate for goaltending depth. Vegas just got Jonathan Quick, but, does anybody feel confident in him? Same for LA with Jonas Korpisalo, who's certainly had his issues this year. Calgary's goaltending situation is just awful right now. Edmonton's is intriguing. Toronto's has been good but not great. There's a lot of teams that could use somebody like Lincoln. It's just like, hey, if you're plan A, if you're not 100% sold, why not try this guy who's, on a hot streak this year, on a heater, and does have some experience in Chicago as a starting goaltender. Wasn't great experience, but it's experience. So I'm surprised more teams aren't calling on Lankinen. It is going to be an interesting day, to say the least. There is a lot of stuff that could happen. Some of it, I think, has a good chance to happen, like Dante Fabbro. Some of it, like Juuse Saros, I would be just genuinely shocked. Tune in to the NHL Locked On NHL's trade deadline special. I'll be a part of it. We're going to be on the Locked On NHL YouTube channel from 2 to 4 this afternoon. We're going to be breaking down all the deals from across the league. And of course, here on the Locked On Predators podcast, whatever happens, we'll be sure to keep you updated. We'll have a full recap Monday morning. So make sure you tune in for that. Yeah. For Ann Kimmel, I'm Nick Morgan. You can find me at ontheforecheck.com. Follow me on Twitter _NSMorgan. Be sure to follow the podcast as well, LO_Predators, and subscribe however you're listening, whether it's on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform. Hitting that subscribe button keeps you in the loop and also really helps us out as well. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back Monday with trade deadline recap. See you then.